Is immigration the black swan event that is driving the housing market?
There's no question.
Yeah.
There's no question. Like, this is a big topic. Like, nobody's really discussing it. Everybody's talking about the border, and they're fighting over the border, and rightly
And
so.
whether the jobs created are good or
Yep.
bad.
Rightly so. Documented, undocumented. But we've been doing a deep dive on this. And the deep dive is, where are all these people going?
Absolutely.
And, as you guys know, that what's interesting is where they're going, they're putting pressure on, of course, the economy, right?
Yep.
They're putting pressure on the education system. They're putting pressure on the health system. They're putting pressure on certainly the housing, and so and food, and of course there's all kinds of stimulus money. I was on a podcast earlier with Clayton Morris. If you guys know who he is, he lived in New York. He was a host of Fox and Friends years ago, and I went down a rabbit hole on New York. And if you take a look at the city of New York, just took 15 hotels out of service, paid $77 million to the owners, and for these temporary immigration centers. There's been $500 million allocated from the governor for this issue. There was another $250 million allocated for 5,000 migrants. And so, I think I looked, and there was something around there's an estimate by the mayor that there's over $12 billion that's going to be allocated to this to immigration over the next 3 years, just for New York.
But they say this housing is temporary, but I don't know where they really expect to put these people or expect them to figure it out.
I remember when my buddy was down on his luck, and he crashed in my spare bedroom of my house once. That was temporary.
Yeah, right. And that
He
was
moved
one
out.
person,
He
yes.
moved out. He got, So I'm telling you, like this is a big deal, and I don't know. What's really, really hard to figure out is obviously documented immigration is super easy to figure out. Like those are numbers, but undocumented, that's extremely hard. And so I went down. I don't know how big the number is. I've seen 7-8 million. Clayton Morris thinks it's way above that. Jerry, can you pull up the one slide? I think this is important. This one here. Thank you. Okay, so let's just start here. Now, it's important to see the word undocumented. Now, oddly enough, I was in El Paso yesterday, flying back from Florida, and we landed right next to this place that had barbed wire all over the place. And I asked the guy, I go, "What is that?" He's like, "That's the ICE Center, immigration. That's where everybody that comes over from Texas, this is where all the media is." I'm like, wow, it was huge. And we started getting into this discussion, and this was El Paso, Texas, which is right down there at the bottom, guys. And as you can see, and what's interesting is as these immigrants move to different markets, whatever they are. I know Governor Abbott from Texas has gotten a lot of news about busing people to New York, but that, obviously it's a bus. It can only hold so many people. But New York specifically has gotten several 100,000 people there. Now, why is this important? It's important because rent growth is up in New York. Occupancy is really high in New York, and housing prices are rising in New York. That's why. So when everybody's talking about real estate's crashing, this is a big deal, because what you have to look at is people that were born minus people that had died plus immigration. That's the population growth that you need to focus on. And so these numbers are unprecedented. The next one I want to show you is we started going down. Danille and I started going down kind of a rabbit hole on other countries. Right?
Well, yeah, because we can sit here all day long and say, oh, it's immigration is a big part of the reason that rents and housing is going up. But really, the only way we can prove that is by looking at other countries and how they handle immigration, and then how their housing market is faring.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the next chart, Jerry, which is Canada. Nope. Let's go back. Nope. It's a chart, so that's okay. There you go. Okay, let's just stay here for a second. So take a look at the left. You're gonna see almost 500,000 people a year being added to Canada. By the way, I grew up on the border of, right below Vancouver, BC, and there's always been immigration into Canada over the years, and they use it as a way to stimulate economy. And at one time, they had a requirement that you had to invest like $1 million, and then you had to open a city. This changed the Canadian economy dramatically. A lot of people from Asia started buying houses there, opening businesses there. The point is that this does change an economy. It also drives things. So I'm not going to go into whether that's the right thing or not, but I will tell you this: over half of the citizens in Canada are pissed right now as a result of the documented immigration. So immigration is $1 million, but what I really want you to focus on is the house price. Look at the housing prices. This is for the country, guys. The entire country is $791,000, $800,000. This is 40 million people. So, and then obviously you can drill down and see the average price of a home in Vancouver is 1.2. Toronto is just over $1 million. So these are unsustainable numbers because wage growth is not growing like this.
Right, and they are. And, 20% of Canada is immigrants, which is why we wanted to look at this country specifically. They have one of the higher immigration levels that are documented. So when you're looking at that, you're seeing specifically that they are increasing the housing prices and the rental rates.
Yeah, and it's, and this is something that I've been watching for a while. Now, every country has a little bit of immigration, so it's just a matter of how much. And now we got to go back, Jerry, to that estimated population of undocumented again. So let's go back and take a look. This is really hard to track, but I can assure you guys it's falling into different cities, different states, and it's actually a drag on that particular area for sure. I'm not even taking a position on immigration. I actually don't care at this point. I'm just trying to show you that it actually is driving things like healthcare. It's driving things like rent. It's driving things like rent growth. It's driving things like education. So, because folks that come into the country need things. And then there's all kinds of money that's being thrown at these, and the states are pissed at the federal government too. That's the other piece. If you really dig into all this stuff, you'll see they're pointing the finger back at the Fed, or at the Biden administration, I should say.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that even Canada's federal authority that's in charge of immigration had said policymakers must understand the misalignment between population growth and housing supply, and how permanent and temporary immigration shapes population growth. So they're coming out. I mean, I think that was a perfect statement, because there is a misalignment. So no matter what you feel about immigration, whether we need these workers or we don't need these workers, or they make the economy grow or they don't, we don't have housing for them. And that is the biggest problem with the immigration right now.
Yeah, and you guys already know we were undersupplied. Mm-hmm. So, from 07, 08 till about 10 years later, 17, 18, there wasn't a lot of new supply added because the banks were in big trouble. This is the big recession we had during that period of time when people lost their houses and people moved from single family into rentals, and then kind of pushed that market to where we are today. the point is there's not a lot of lending going on. So there has to be lending to build, and yet the population was growing. It was growing from births minus deaths plus immigration. So you had a growing population during 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, yet there was no new housing, really significant housing being added. So you had a lot more people coming into the country, whether it was naturally or across the border, and that created pressure on housing. And that housing pressure started to drive the single-family housing prices up and rents up.
Yeah, and just for some data, over the last 40 years, for every 1,000 immigrants that came into America, the average home value has went up $116. So think about that. If you're bringing in millions of people, what that's going to do. So that's basically by county, right? So I just think that is some data right there. But I also want to get into Japan, which sits on the other side of
let's
immigration.
take a look at the opposite of this, okay? Because you guys might know the population growth for the U.S. is actually trending down. So there's less people being born than there were in the last 20, and that's continuing. And then, of course, at some point, I think it's about 2035, actually deaths will actually be it'll cross over, and you're going to see a negative population growth in the U.S. in the next 20 years. And so Japan is actually already experiencing this. So let's take a look at that.
Yeah, Jerry, pull up the one with all the different. Yep. So here you can see, Japan has 0.2% rental inflation.
Yep.
And then that's month to month. And so you can then see, Australia, who's bringing in a lot of immigrants, has, 7.8%. Canada has 8.2%. The U.S. Is down
5.5.
the bottom at 5.6%.
I love the China number. By the way, that's a bunch of
zero
BS.
and zero.
China
just doesn't
tell
track.
anybody anything. Like
they're like, we've had zero inflation either way, so don't worry about it.
Pay no attention.
And even like the United Kingdom's at 7.2. So when you're looking at this, what you're realizing is the more net immigration that these Western countries have, the more it is affecting housing significantly.
And what I really just want you to see here is the two top ones, which is Australia and Canada. They have a very, very progressive immigration policy. And by the way, these are documented. That's a really important point. We also have a documented immigration policy. And so you can see what's happening from a rent growth standpoint, because also the same people that don't want housing are the ones that are upset because these numbers are going up. So you have basically the public and the politicians. They're not actually making it easy for new construction, for supply to be added. So you're adding people, but disallowing the ability to add supply. So you have a demand and a low supply. It's for sure going to drive rent up. It's for sure going to drive housing prices up. And the reason why I wanted to start with Canada is because imagine, guys, like you see those numbers, like there's nothing affordable up there, right? I mean, these houses, we have the ability, if immigration continues to come in at the rate it's coming in, documented or undocumented, we have a serious runaway train on affordability. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. I mean, this affordability could really, really get really bad. And this could be, in a lot of your lifetimes, this could be, you might not ever get into a single family house.
Right.
That's a very possible thing, unless there's a lot of supply to offset it. Because what offsets pricing? Supply. When there's too much of anything, prices are less. It doesn't matter whether it's a concert or housing or rent. It doesn't really matter. Whenever there's a lot of people trying to get something, prices go up. And whenever there's bunch of people that don't want anything, prices go down. Just look at, I remember, I told this story this weekend. I was speaking in Florida at the Rebel Capitalist Live. I was managing a property in the Tri-Cities of Washington, and it was in a little town called West Richland. So you got Pasco, Kennewick, and Richland, and then there was this little town called West Richland, and then there was a bridge that went over this river. And I was managing an apartment property there. It was a couple hundred units, and it was full, and it was awesome. And I was like, look how smart I am. This thing's great, kicking off all this cash. And then right down the road was a power plant called the Hanford Nuclear Power Plant, which was right on the Columbia River. They decommissioned it. So 12,000 jobs wind down. All of a sudden, no people, no rent. That's a fact. And then housing prices went down. Same thing happened in Detroit in the 50s. And so it could happen the other way. So a lot of people look for these booms and busts. And we've seen it up in the shale sands up in North Dakota. We've seen it in Midland, Texas. You know, when areas that go through boom and busts, housing prices go up, they go down, rents go up, they go down. So we've seen it in the U.S. a lot, and some places never recover. I went back and looked. In Detroit, you could buy single-family houses for $100. Just Google that. You won't even believe it. And so the question would be, why would you? But the reality is that as you add people or take people away, period, it's going to affect real estate prices. And so that's what drives housing, people. And in this particular case, what's driving housing prices and what's driving rents are people. Now, a lot of them aren't from this country, and that's going to piss off a lot of people. And then what's going to happen is they're going to get pissed at the landlords.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, too, because of rental inflation and housing price inflation, it changes the dynamics of how people live in houses, right? So, when we looked at Japan, it's very interesting because their population is declining. They don't have hardly any immigrants that come in, but housing prices, they're not going down. They're kind of just stable. So the question is why? So you look more into that, and basically in the Japanese culture, typically the parents would live with the kids, and then the kids would take care of them.
Even the grandparents.
3
generations in one home. Very common.
Yeah, but now that, wages, their housing inflation is kind of at a standstill. The people are saying, I want to have my own place.
Well,
I want to get my own place.
It's affordable now.
Yeah, it's affordable. So I want my own place, and mom and dad, you can live in your own place, and so you're having all this, which you've never had before. But then when you look at countries like the U.S. that's experiencing significant housing inflation, the opposite is true. So kids are staying at home with their parents. People are roommating up. People aren't getting their own place. People are continuing to be renters. So it's interesting how that housing inflation, because, we always think in America, like, oh, yeah, we live on our own. Like, we would never live with our parents and live with our grandparents because we want our own place. We don't even want, we want a 2-bedroom house or 2-bedroom apartment all to ourselves, everything else. And that's only because our wages were higher than our rental inflation. But now that the rental inflation is so much, people don't have those luxuries, and they're not going to have those luxuries.
So I've watched this over the years, and you guys will know what I'm talking about when I mention it. But there is a place in the U.S. where this has gone on, and that is Hawaii. So for those of you who have been, Hawaii is constrained. They don't like new development, which is fine. So there hasn't been a lot of new housing there. There is, of course, just like every place, but generally it's pretty tough to build there. And, it's a beautiful place. Yet that little state has grown like crazy. And so what else has grown? Housing prices, rent prices. And so for years, there's been up to 3 people in one home. Grandparents, parents, and kids. Just because the affordability is out of control. And for those of you who know and have been there, you've seen this. So if you start to really dig, you'll start to see that the entry point for Hawaii is quite large. Now, that's, again, because of the amount of people that have gone there based on the supply of housing. And so we've seen this right here in the U.S. It's been an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, this always had also happened in like California. Like I remember when I first went to California and my friend had a married couple living with her. So basically it was like they had one room, she had the other room. And I thought that was the weirdest thing because in Arizona, everything was so affordable. You could just get a place, and now we're seeing that a lot. Like we know people even in our office that are married that have a roommate because they need something to offset it. Or even my tenants, they're married and their mom lives with them because they need help offsetting that rent. And so I think that you're just going to see more and more of that based on
you are
in the lifestyle in the US is going to change because of that. And people, that's just going to become the new norm. I mean, you always hear people like, you can only raise rent so high because there's only so much affordability. The truth is people need a place to live and they figure it out, whether it's living with their parents, moving their mom in, getting a roommate, whatever that is, they're going to do.
They're not. Yeah. I doubt they're going to move from California to Cleveland, right?
Ohio,
Ohio's
pretty
reasonable right
still.
now. But, I guess it's a possibility if you want to. By the way, I said that because Danille's from that area.
Good old
but,
Cleveland.
I was talking to George Gammon this weekend because I was speaking at Rebel Capitalist Live. And he, Adriana, his assistant that works for him, who's just incredible, she lives in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 750 square feet. And they rent, and there's 3 families in there. And that is more common. This is Colombia and this is Medellin, but that is extremely common in a lot of these other countries is to find multiple people living in one place because this is exactly what happens over time. Right?
Exactly. Yep.
So we could be in this time where there's no way, guys, that the interesting thing about real estate, it's really, really dumb. Like it takes a while to buy the land, get it approved, get a construction loan, build the place, and even then you're not going to build anything affordable because all those costs are expensive. And we can go down that rabbit hole, but today we won't. The point is you can't build affordable housing. So and the other thing I just point out, actually Joseph Wang pointed this out to me. He said the one thing that's going to happen with this immigration is, and this is going to piss some of you guys off, it's also going to keep wages low.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
So there's going to be very low wage growth when you're going to have high asset price growth. So that it's going the wrong way. There's going to be, because when you have the amount of people coming in that are willing to do things that maybe you guys aren't because they're just trying to survive, there's going to be a pull on that lower end from a wage growth standpoint. So you have lower wages based on the amount of people that are coming here. They'll work, and documented or not. And then you've got the pressure on housing, which is just going to drive these asset prices up. So I think this is going to get significantly worse in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we had talked about stagflation, and that all kind of aligns, right? Like your basic needs that everyone has to have, groceries, housing, energy, goes up while wages go down. And then, it's not a good situation.
No, it isn't. And again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be having immigration policy, but this isn't it. Like
Sword and Scale said, "Build back better?" ?
Yeah.
But I do want to touch on something because this question comes up a lot, and it's why can't the government just build a bunch of housing for people? Like, why can't they just build a bunch of housing?
Knock themselves out. Do it. No, I agree with you. I think that, first of all, the government has proven that they haven't done a good job at that. But at this point, there just needs to be a supply of housing. So,
but the problem is they then have to manage it, right? They have to manage the housing.
Unless it's for sale. Well, the best thing they could do is stop sending money, to places like Ukraine and build low-cost housing for people and just give it to them, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I mean, you guys want rents to go down. You want housing prices to go down. take care of the people that are driving it up, because that's the position we're in. And everybody's going to blame the landlord, and the landlords want to build affordable housing. Period. They do, but their hands are tied in so many ways. The interest rates are high, the cost to build is high, the land's high, the cities and the counties don't make it easy to build, and there's all these restrictions. And by the time you actually build something, it's expensive.
Yeah, because you have to profit on it. Alan said, can you just describe the other factor impacting Canada? Wages compared to housing costs are incredibly out of proportion.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah, I didn't look at that for Canada, but it's a really good point.
Well, it is a good point. I mean, I guarantee that Australia, the UK, Canada, because there's so much immigration, it is affecting wages.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Right. So everything's headed the wrong way. And so what will happen is the government will start cracking down soon on affordability. They're going to say, oh, this is too much. This is too much. They're going to go after landlords, because that's all they know how to do, and then that money will move to where it's treated best. Those lenders, those investors will just go where it's landlord friendly, and they'll build where they can, and the cycle will continue.
Well, the problem is that's just more red tape. So then when you start telling a landlord what they can charge, then nobody wants to buy or invest or build in those areas, and they need housing. So yeah, you might get less investors and more people can be homeowners, but not really, because nobody's going to want to build or do anything.
Well, they can't.
In those areas.
I just heard, I got to verify this, but maybe you guys can do it for me, because I love your fact checkers. California just finished an affordable housing community, and somebody told me that the costs were about $1 million a unit.
Because of all the government work.
Yeah, all the red tape. So just to put that in perspective, we could build that for, $300,000. So it was 3 times, I guess. So now, if you go back and look, there's all kinds of corruption around affordable housing, and the misappropriation of funds, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the government has proven itself to be a very poor steward of public money to be able to do this, and they're better off managing the public sector, with a heavy hand. By the way, they should. And there needs to be some private-public partnerships. That's what we need. We need the government to provide assistance, to provide affordable housing money, to let people build housing. Manage our profit for all we care. Who cares? But we just need to provide housing. We need more housing. We need more supply. That's the only thing that's going to keep these prices down, is supply, especially when you sprinkle all these people in, 6, 7, 8, 10 million, who knows the number. It's a lot of people that came into this country in the last few years, and they're going everywhere, and they're driving up prices. And, the people that were already here, they're the ones that are in trouble.
Yeah, especially the ones that don't own a home yet.
Now they're getting hit from the wage standpoint. The price is going to go up, and I think we're going to see a massive run on pricing here in the next 2 to 3 years. We have to. You can't add this many people and not have a run on housing.
So I do have a question for you based on that. So, you've talked about the real estate cycles, right? You have what's the first one? Well, anyways, okay. So we're in the
guys. This is it right here.
Yes, thank you, Jerry.
Jerry saves
so we
the
have
day.
Recovery, expansion, hypersupply, recession. You're saying multifamily is in the hypersupply phase because of all the new construction that just hit. Do you think it's going to hit a recession phase, or do you think all the people coming in are going to take up the supply and we actually move to more of a recovery phase?
Excellent question. Okay, so take a look. It starts with the residential on the left side. So residential, the reason residential is not peaked is because there's not a lot of new construction on residential, because it's not affordable and the interest rates are high and costs are high. And as you guys are seeing, we're having year over year pricing is going up for single family. Why is this important? It's important because as people come into the housing phase, which is 18, 19 years old, and they rent, can't stop that. They're going to dump into the multifamily side. They're going to dump into the rental side because they can't afford the residential. So what's going to happen is the amount of people that are coming into the rental market for whatever reason. Maybe they're living at their parents. Maybe they're roommates and they decide not to be roommates anymore. That's called household formation. So that is all going to absorb the, call it million plus units that are actually hitting the market right now. So there's 1 million units plus that got started over 2 years ago, but when rates were lower. And those are all, I call it the pig through the python, right? It's just moving through. That's going to move through. It's going to be fully absorbed by the end of 2025. And then 26, 27, and 28, you're going to see massive, massive rent growth again. And you're not going to see a lot of new construction. So there's a 2 to 3 year lag on construction. When you build a house, it takes a long period of time. When you build an apartment complex, it can take 2 years before it's even done. It could take even 3 years. Just depends. So all this stuff is moving through. And so right now it's all hitting. And so the tenants are in control right now. The tenants are going to have soft. You're not going to see a lot of rent growth and all that stuff. That's precisely as a result of the supply. It's not happening on residential, single-family residential. So you're going to see single-family residential go up. You're going to see the multifamily get fully absorbed. And now the immigration just makes it even faster. And so multifamily is going to actually, it's going to get to an expansion phase again. So it's not going to actually hit into the recession phase, which was the long answer to your question.
Okay, primarily because of immigration, you feel.
That and the fact that people that live in the U.S. Are not going to be able to buy a house.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So you have a natural, like my kids, as you know, they're supposed to graduate from college, or maybe not even, just they're supposed to get out of the house at some point, right? They go into rentals for a while. They save money. Then they're supposed to be able to buy a house. So that's the natural progression. That's a balanced market. A balanced market is go build your credit, pay rent for a little while, save some cash, and then move into an affordable house and then grow your net worth. That, in my opinion, is what the American dream should be. So that's just not the reality. Now it's move into a rental, get several roommates, and just struggle. And they're not even you saw the savings rates numbers they're at all-time lows. So people aren't saving money. They're barely keeping up with inflation. And then what's happening is they're not moving into the single family side. So what's going to happen is you're going to have, again, renter nation. We're moving into a renter nation. And then just add renter nation and add immigrants. That's essentially what's happening.
Right. Absolutely. And then do you think, though, that, there's anything that people can really do to try to mitigate that or anything?
Vote.
Yeah. Well, and I've even seen that with my tenants. I have 2 tenants. They're pregnant now. They got married and they're pregnant. Typically when they get married, they move out and then they buy a house, in my experience. But now they didn't. They stayed in my place. Now that they're pregnant, they want an additional bedroom. They want 3 bedrooms. So now they're going to go a little outside of the Scottsdale area to get more affordable rent because they still can't afford to buy a house. And then I have another tenant who's lived with me now since 2020. When she moved in, she said, hey, I'm just looking for a place for a year or two because I'm going to save and I'm going to buy a house, and this was March of 2020. She moved in. She's still living there, because housing prices have doubled. So whatever she had saved, and she's a single mom with 2 kids. So, a lot of my tenants are really staying in place unless they're moving to a different rental. I haven't had any tenants since 2021 that have left to buy a house.
Well, let's
and
talk
before
about
that was the main
All right.
thing.
When you first started buying houses, they were in the 2s.
Yeah, and condos were in the 150 range.
Okay. Well, that wasn't very long ago, right? Because,
2016, yeah.
Okay. So this is an important point. Then the next thing, remember you kept buying and then you were buying in the 400s?
Well, all of a sudden, not.
Right. No, okay, then they doubled.
In 2023 in the 400 or,
Okay, now they're in the 6s.
Yeah.
That's a fact. That's where we live. That's exactly what's going on. That's affordable right now in Scottsdale, at least. It's in the sixes.
Yeah, for a single family in the sixes, and then for a condo about almost four, like
Yeah.
375, something like that.
So how, now let's go back to wage growth. Who can afford that?
Right. And interest rates.
Yeah. So
Interest
that's what we're
rates.
talking about, and we're in a little bubble here, of course, but you can just go anywhere in the country and see this exact same thing.
Well, my tenants always used to, because, I'm a good landlord, so they would always stay with me till they bought a house. That was kind of the thing from like 2016 till 2020, 2021. They would just live there, and then they'd say, hey, Danille, we're buying a house. We're so excited. This is the closing date, and I'd have to work with their closing date on when they were going to move out and all those things. And now it's just we're moving to another rental, either in a cheaper location or a bigger rental, or, I haven't heard of anyone buying. And so they're just kind of stuck in this renting cycle, and they back up the rents, because since they're not moving out or they're moving to a different rental, the need for rentals just goes up, because you have all those 18 to 23-year-olds moving out of their parents' house that want a place to rent.
And mortgage payments are $1,000 a month more.
At least.
Plus.
At least.
Right?
Yeah.
So you want to get upset. Get upset at supply. Get upset at the fact that people. If there's a supply of housing hitting a market, it's good for the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want. You want the consumer to have lots of choices. When the consumer has choices, the price goes down. Period.
Yeah.
They don't have choices, and this is precisely the problem. And so a lot of you are just going to blame the landlord. That's very ridiculous, because the landlords, the real estate investors want to build, they want to invest, and the market dictates rent. The market dictates pricing, and right now prices are high to build, and the interest rates are also high. So affordability is at all-time low. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those listening, make sure you check out my webinar. It's going to be this Wednesday at 9 a.m. Arizona time. We're going to be talking about inflation survival guide, how to be financially secure even when the economy isn't. Some really good pointers in here. So just go to kenmcroy.com/webinars to sign up. It is free. So we are going to jump into our premium questions now. I think Sherry had a really good premium question. She said, what are the positive effects of immigration? So I think she saw our title and was like, well, what are the positives? And there are positives.
Yeah, I think that's true. I guess it depends on which side of the fence you're on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are markets that are declining,
Mm-hmm.
and at some point, as the baby boomers start to die off, and if the birth number still continues to go down, population drives everything. So by having a nice immigration policy, especially into the U.S., I think everyone benefits, right?
Yeah.
Overall, right? Just because it just keeps things in balance. You don't want deflation. So I guess immigration is a way to prevent deflation, but right now it's kind of out of the bag.
Right. It's hard because immigration prevents deflation, but you're still getting lowering of wages. Predominantly
Depends.
but predominantly because of who is coming in, right? If you bring in a bunch of people from the same wage class, it's going to deflate
That's
things.
true. Yeah,
If
that's
you
what I
had
mean.
things from different wage classes, then it wouldn't deflate things as much. But
Right.
because of that.
Yeah, and no matter how upset you guys might be with our country, it still continues to be where everybody wants to end up.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah, they're just trying to get a better life. But there are benefits to it, because we do have a declining birth rate, partially just because people are having kids later or not having kids at all, partially because it's so expensive to have kids. And then obviously, you have your boomers getting older and things. So we do need people. So, I mean, there is a benefit to it. If we had housing and enough jobs for everybody, it would be better.
For sure.
Yeah, like then,
Yeah.
so, But the housing piece, she really can do something about. So
Listen, if I could, I would build as much affordable housing as I could, because that is actually the biggest opportunity presenting itself right now. Problem is, you can't.
right. Absolutely. And then Britton had a good question. Britton said, are you ever too young to start syndicating to buy multifamily real estate? I'm going to be doing in syndication business to buy a multifamily units. I'm 21 and I've got a duplex and a fourplex by myself, and I've managed for 2 years.
Oh,
now.
good for you, man. Managed for 2 years, so you started at 19? That's fantastic. So, no, the answer is no. But again, I would be very careful. Make sure the cash flow's on day one. That's the only thing I would say. There's nothing wrong with syndicating. What happens is people run out of money, and then syndicating is simply as easy as just finding somebody else that can, could be one person, could be two people, could be three, just to help you buy that next project. So now they're your partner. Now you better perform. You better actually buy something that cash flows, because if you raise money from other people, they're going to want a return on it, because right now they can park it in a treasury bill at 4 or 5%. So just be cognizant of that.
Well, and it's a tricky time to do syndications right now if you're not super experienced. So just make sure you just don't get in over your head. Keep doing those same, smaller deals that you're used to for now. And
cash flow solves everything.
Yeah.
So higher interest rates make things harder to cash flow, but I do think the next 2 years are a really good time to be looking.
Do you think he should do something with a value add right now?
There doesn't appear to be a lot of value add, but if it's a long-term hold, who cares? If it cash flows today and there's a value add there, then do it later. Like right now, affordability is the big ticket. So if you can buy something classic or, value add that has potential, do that.
But just don't value add it yet.
Just don't do it now, yeah, because the rent growth is you're going to be competing against all these new units that are coming on right now, and we're seeing 1 month free, 2 months free. So try to compete with brand new 1 month free, 2 months free.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
hard. Yep.
All right. Thank you guys for joining, and we will see you next week.
See you guys.